Hey guys, welcome to the Nomiki Show. We are doing a different type of show today on Friday. We are going to be leading with a pre-tape with Azzie Mekhitarian, who is going to tell us a little bit about what happened in Armenia, what is actually currently happening in Armenia, and what got us there. And then later we will go live. I will be here live for our Fem Friday panel where we're talking about Bernie and his goal to be labor secretary and what the cabinet is shaping up to look like with Kim Kelly, she's back again, and Ava Mohsenin, and we are going to have a great show. So stay tuned. A little bit different format today, so we really appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks for watching and listening to the Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers. All right, you guys, we have been meaning to touch on this story for really the last month, but you know that we have this thing called this election and crises after crises, and it was very difficult. But I am so grateful that we are finally speaking to our next guest. Her name is Azzie Mekhitarian, and she is a researcher and professor at Pasadena City College in California. We're going to be talking about Armenia. You may have heard that there was this deal a couple of days ago over the war that has taken place in the last month between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And there's a lot of confusion. I made a tweet the other day, and I have Turkish propagandists now going after me on Twitter. It's very confusing. This is a very loaded topic, and I'm just really happy that we have an opportunity to talk about it. Azzie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. There's a lot to talk about.
So let's try to fit in the history of Armenia in 20 minutes.
Okay, well, like that. Okay, let's do this. Well, actually, related to this. So let's not go back. So related to this area, Armenia, we all know that, you know, in the early 1900s, we had the Armenian genocide take place by Turkey, and Turkey's had a really hard time sort of accepting this part, and it's been really advocating a revisionist history. It's part of their sort of national myth. Okay, so that's one side. So we're going to leave it right there on their side. We have the Soviet Union come about. And when the Soviet Union comes about, it takes up all of this land, all of these republics. And within these republics, it allows like this Stalin did this very strategically, divide and conquer, would allow like ethnic enclaves within a republic so that the republic wouldn't unite over its own ethnicity as much as it would over its Soviet identity. So within the Republic of Azerbaijan, Soviet Azerbaijan, there was this enclave called Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, Armenians call it Artsakh, which is an ethnically Armenian area. Armenians have been there for thousands of years, proved by monasteries, historical proofs, archaeological sites, but it doesn't matter. Stalin sort of kept doing this as a divide and conquer idea. And so this is an independent oblast, like an enclave inside, so it is sort of it's independently running itself underneath the Azeri governments under the USSR. When the USSR is now falling apart and Soviet law states that the countries, the republics, can vote in referendum for independence, and so too can the enclaves, the independent autonomous regions under Soviet law. So just as
how did they let that happen?
Well, this is Soviet law, right? They're falling apart in the late 80s, right? Soviet Union's falling apart, but they have these procedures in place for their republics to become independent. And just like Ukraine and just like Georgia and just like Armenia itself, Armenia proper itself, the Nagorno-Karabakh region, which Armenians call Artsakh, also voted in referendum to be independent. So the same way that Azerbaijan gets independence, so too does this small region. Okay, so but Soviet Union collapses and Azerbaijan doesn't want to accept this independence because it's technically under what was once their USSR area. But the same way Ukraine gets independence, the same way anybody else got independence after the fall of the Soviet Union. So the Armenians in that region begin to sort of agitate for independence. Pre this, there are already serious discrimination, hostilities, and then pogroms and murder, both in Sumgait and Baku, because there's like this minority population who wants to
Azerbaijan.
be separate. Yeah, inside, well, sort of like as an enclave, right? So the ones that are trying to protect, the Armenians who are trying to protect themselves, leave a lot of these areas and go to Artsakh for protection. They fight this really bloody war, and so they have declared independence through referendum, through Soviet law. They have fought for independence and won that independence under ceasefire, and then they are not yet recognized internationally as independent. They're recognized internationally under Azeri land, but disputed territories. So it's considered this disputed land or space. This is a basic history. Right. So there's a little bit more to this because there's pipelines that are going to be going through. Right. There's gold mines. So this is like other things.
It's an oil-rich state too, right? Like there's as Baku. If the photos I've seen of Baku and friends of mine who've lived there, I mean, it's like a glass city, right? Built off of oil profits. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There's a house of cards that built off of oil profits, but we're talking about now. So this enclave is about 150 to 180,000 people, ethnic Armenians mainly, living in this autonomous region, independent region. So they have all, under international law, there are these two principles that we're looking at, right? We're looking at the principle of self-determination and then the principle of territorial sovereignty. But the way that we look at it, and sort of Azerbaijan's territorial sovereignty argument doesn't hold because of Soviet law and Article 3 of Soviet law is how Azerbaijan sort of got independence and then how this enclave got independence. So their argument under territorial integrity doesn't hold as it might have if this area didn't do it legally, but they did it legally through referendum. So it's a small area, and then you have Armenia on the other side of it. There's a tiny little corridor that attaches Armenia to their ethnic people in this area. And then on the other side of that is Turkey. So Turkey, this is why, because I brought up Turkey first, because Turkey Armenia in the middle, if you look at the map, is sort of in the way of this pan-Turkic ideal, right? Because you have Turkey and then you have Azerbaijan, which is a Turkic people. And then you have the Caspian Sea and then you have Turkmenistan. This tiny little Armenia, we've kind of always been in the way of this neo-Ottoman dream.
Right.
So, after the genocide, we lost like 80% of our lands. millions of people died, not just Armenians, Greeks, Assyrians. I mean, lots of people died after, like in this sort of ethnic cleansing. Armenians were about 1.6 million people. So we're kind of sandwiched in between those two places. Now, hostilities start at a very convenient time in this area. Azerbaijan attacks the autonomous region of Nagorno-Karabakh on September 27th. No one is paying attention. We're in COVID. The United States has we'll talk about U.S. policy later, but Turkey-friendly president in office. But also it's just not paying attention. We're not paying attention. The world's not paying attention. And this is exactly how the genocide happened. It's exactly the genocide. But this sort of ethnic cleansing language started to get ratcheted up. And so those of us who are watching this sort of language get ratcheted up, the posturing of ethnic cleansing, we're getting really nervous about this. And so we're seeing Turkey talk about like fulfilling the dreams that his grandparents had, or the Turkish forefathers had. Of
this is Erdogan who's saying this.
Yeah, this is Erdogan saying these things. Okay. So having this sort of dream of like fulfilling their grandparents' dream in the Caucasus.
This is so interesting. You're saying this because Dorsey, he can flash this up on screen, but I tweeted something out about the deal, and we can talk about the deal in a second, a couple of days ago, about why did they even have a say in this deal? And now technically they were not signers, but we'll talk about that later, but they did definitely have a say. And I got this, I mean, it's still going on my Twitter, hundreds and hundreds of people on Twitter, supposedly Turkish, or bots or whatever they are, paid. But the grandparent thing, that message kept coming up.
Yeah.
They were saying like, this is the dream of our grandparents. And first off, let me tell you about the dream of my grandparents, whose village you went into. I want to take this personally. And you raped and pillaged my grandparents' village. So let's talk about my grandparents.
Oh, I didn't know.
I'm Greek, sorry.
Oh, you're Greek. Okay. So you know exactly.
I should have started off with that.
Yes.
But I mean, it was just mind-boggling, like that message that you just said. See, I didn't understand that had come from Erdogan directly. I didn't know that was his messaging. Okay.
Yeah, and it started to ratchet up. So when the Sophia, the cathedral in Turkey was taken, the Greek cathedral, was taken and converted. All of us on this end, like Armenians, we thought, okay, here's the sign.
This was a couple of months ago. Yeah. For the folks who don't know, Hagia Sophia is in Istanbul, and it's it used to be an Orthodox church. Actually, it was many things. It's gone through many iterations of, if you go there, it's a beautifully historic place. But they converted it just recently, a few months ago, to an active mosque, not just something that has, there's still, and they covered up the icons, the very famous Orthodox icons that were still kind of, recognized. But what's odd about that to me is you've got the blue mosque, an active mosque, like 2 feet away. Why did they need to convert Hagia Sophia into a mosque as well?
Because this is an ideological battle in some ways. And so when that happened, Armenians, we looked at that and we're like, uh-oh, it's coming. Like we knew. And then, along with this, Armenia itself, the country itself, just went through in 2008 this amazing sort of democratic revolution that was taking place. And for like the first time since it's been independent, we ended up having this sort of dark gray cloud of post-Soviet Eastern European style living sort of lifted from us. And there was this idea and hope of civil society and democracy and rule of law, and maybe this cleansing of these kleptocratic, corrupt leaders, Putin-like leaders kind of coming out of the country. So there was hope also fermenting, but a bunch of very rich oligarchs didn't really like this. So this is also going on at the same time. So when these little pieces started falling into place, and then the language was coming out of Erdogan and Turkey, this sort of ultranationalist language, which, their lira has been dropping, and that happens when the economy drops, when things are not looking good within the country, you look to sort of nationalist sentiments to unite people and to sort of not deal with that.
And there's dissent. Can I just pause for 1 second? In Turkey right now, there's dissent. You have a rising leftist class. Even the mayor of Istanbul is a leftist, supposedly, and is at war with
You
Erdogan.
had an amazing, vibrant, sort of liberal movement taking place in Turkey, right? Erdogan tries to smash this. I don't think he's been able to smash it yet. I think with the economy falling, it's going to be hard to smash that out completely. However, if you create the enemy on the outside and refocus energies towards the enemy on the outside, and the same thing was happening in Azerbaijan. And I guess when that democratic revolution took place in Armenia, this is a revolution that took place without one single shot being fired. And at first we're like, wow, is this sort of Western revolution? Is this happening by a Western propped person? But it began to, as you paid attention to it, it felt very organic. Like the people just needed to breathe, civil society needed to live. And so it looked like it was being a very positive movement. But it was dangerous to the region because democracy is contagious, hope is contagious, civil liberties and civil society movements are contagious. And so having that be a risk, a contagion in the region, I think might have been a bit too much for those oligarchs, those oil-rich dictators. Azerbaijan also, as tight as they are and as sort of revisionist history as they have, I think they have a civil society movement inside that is trying to agitate for change. And they've been under this dictator and his family forever. Their vice president is the wife of the dictator. I mean, the money, they have all this oil money, but it's not going to the people,
The wife of that, sorry. It's like Melania being like a vice president.
I know, it would be it's almost like a horrible comedy. But the people are the ones who end up paying the price for it. So, but what better way to sort of reignite this pride in your nation and nationalistic sentiment than to say we're going to go take back our land that has been taken from us. And a lot of those people don't know their history. Like they don't know the history of the Soviet Union either. They don't know it. It's not
taught, because it's
not taught, it's like completely taken as suppressed, completely suppressed. They can't get the information unless they're out. But in any case, so then a war starts, and they it wasn't even a war. I don't know if you can call it a war. It was an aggression. There's like 150,000 people with a very small army, and you have 10 million people. Even if you include Armenia with it, Armenia has less than 3 million people. You have 10 million people on one side with their strong army in Azerbaijan. You have 90 million people or something on the other side in Turkey with their very sophisticated army backing Azerbaijan, and this tiny little place in the center. So for a minute, Artsakh thought it can hold because it has this very nice strategic mountainous location, and mountainous people are very like hardy and strong. It's really hard to conquer mountainous people. And for a moment they thought they can hold. And then it turned out that Turkey had sent in a bunch of mercenaries and jihadists that were being paid. And then international, like Russia, Europe, the United States, international organizations were confirming this. So now we have these mercenaries and jihadists also fighting they were from Libya, Syria, and then you have Israeli drones. So it was almost impossible. And right before this agreement that was signed on November 10th, Genocide Watch put out a warning that genocide in Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh as we call it, is imminent. And so Armenia was up against the back of the wall with the guns directly at it. And the people in Artsakh had no real choice, I don't think. But there's other things that are bigger than nationalism. And we all know dictators and oligarchs and these people who thrive off of getting us, the people, to dislike and to hate each other. They're filling their pockets. So it's not just nationalism. It's not just Turkey's hate. It's not just Turkey's hate for Armenians, although Turkey generally hates anything that has to do with Armenians, or Turkey's hate for Greeks. Turkey has this sort of expansionist thing that's going on in the Mediterranean right now with Greece as well.
Oh yeah, they're for folks who are curious, they're trying to frack and take over literally like 12, more than 12 islands. I mean, and it's like mind-boggling.
They're being allowed. Okay, but they're being allowed to. So why are they being allowed to? Why, if you look at international law, Azerbaijan's logic doesn't hold for territorial integrity? Why? Why is no nation around the world coming to what the law kind of, completely says, kind of is drawn out, that you can see it in the Montevideo, like you can see the law is drawn out, one. Two, everybody around the world is seeing Turkey with this sort of expansionist movements all over the place with its hands in multiple places. The day that this contract or this ceasefire gets signed, Turkey is bombing Kurds in northern Europe. Just yesterday, we have a Syrian village is bombed by Turkey. Turkey is doing this sort of free-for-all bullying. It's kind of this bully state in a lot of ways, and it's doing this in a free-for-all way. But why? Why is Turkey being allowed to act like this? Why is Azerbaijan being allowed to get away with this? What? And now we say follow the money.
Right. So that's what I agree with you. Follow the money. I mean, this is ultimately the principle. Yeah. What was so fascinating about this was it seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong, from the surface, that you had this very strange alliance between Russia and the United States on this issue. Yeah. And they're clearly more powerful than Turkey. And yet Turkey, NATO member, I mean, and the EU is just like the same thing in Greece. I mean, Greeks are up in arms, like, how can you say you're taking over essentially part of the Mediterranean, 15, 20 islands, one of which my family's from, and I go every summer. Like, it's just like you could see Turkey from my window, basically. And I mean, how is it that EU countries are just like, oh, what's going on? We don't know what's going on. But it took Russia and the US to kind of say, all right, fine, let's do something about this. No, am I wrong? This is mind-boggling.
Okay, but it's not. It's not mind-boggling. It's annoying to watch, but it holds true at all times. We are watching the world put the states. So when I talk about this, I really mean governments. The people around the world are not buying this anymore, but the governments are still pushing this sort of old guard mentality. The people and the masses, they're slowly beginning to see, and they're not buying it. But so when I say the world community, I mean the nation states of the world. The nation states of the world watched as Azerbaijan and Turkey together, both authoritarian governments, both with democracy ratings and a freedom of press rating, and then freedom ratings next to, well, at least Azerbaijan next to North Korea, but both very low on those scales. Azerbaijan very clearly committed war crimes, no questions asked, not based on Armenian observation, based on Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and journalists from international all around the world. There were cluster bombs being used. White phosphorus was used in our forests, burned the forests because in the last war, the Armenian soldiers won because they hid in the forest. It's their land. They know that land they can see it. They can understand the land very well, and they use that to their advantage. So this time, Azerbaijan just white phosphorus burned the whole place. Okay. Beheading of POWs, sending videos of those beheadings to their brothers of the captured soldiers, committing war crime after war crime, bombing civilians, hospitals, churches. Why do they then get rewarded?
And not to mention, there are these like they're UNESCO sites, is that correct? Or they're that are completely being demolished or taken over, right? In this
taken over, and then they'll like sort of destroy it or write a revisionist history or flood things with the stories that are not correct. It's the MO is very common, and we're watching it take place. We saw Aliyev with the BBC reporter, her saying, "I'm sorry, our journalists were there and they saw." You're like, no, and she's like, "They were there. You're telling me no." She's like, that's not what happened. What didn't happen.
We'll pull a clip of that and show that.
Yeah, so you're seeing that take place live. The same thing that happened sort of at the time of the genocide, this sort of rewriting of all of these things. Because if you flood the media circuit with disinformation, people get tired. They don't want to know. But this is really important for people who are not Armenian and not Greek. This is really important because regionally, we're talking about an area that is really important for U.S. interests and European interests. So from Baku, from Azerbaijan, we have two pipelines going through Baku, then Georgia, then through Turkey, and then to Europe, skirting Russian sort of dominance of natural gas and oil pipelines. Okay, we have this. There was another option for these pipelines. It could have been Armenia and then Turkey. So if Armenia-Turkey relations could have worked out, that could have been good. But Turkey just wants to wipe Armenia out for his like Ottoman ideals and expansionist notions, right? Or they could have gone through Iran and then still gotten to Europe. But Iran is constantly under threat of U.S. attack, and it still is regionally. I mean, my hope is that with the Biden presidency, at least the language and maybe some of the actions will deter Turkey. It could be that, Turkey saw the writing on the wall and decided to act rapidly while Trump's still in office to get away with as much as they can. But I'm not quite sure if I'm saying that out of hope, but I don't think that's right. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't think the writing's completely on the wall for Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh. It's not done yet. Today, people are en masse exiting. There's an exodus of Armenians from that area because they don't believe that the Azeri IDPs or internally displaced people, that they will come back and not murder them because they have in the past. So they're scared. So they're leaving. And so you're watching to Armenia proper. So you're watching this mass exodus take place, which looks so much like past mass exoduses, and it's really, really heartbreaking. But I do not think it's done. I don't think Azerbaijan and Turkey should be too excited about the outcome. I think
Azzie, this is so interesting. Thank you for this brilliant overview of the history of the region and the interests and the deal. Incredibly complicated, and you made it so understandable, even for someone like me.
That's great. Just pay attention. The area is dynamic, and it's going to affect all of us in the U.S. We've got to really pay attention.
Absolutely. Azzie Mekhitarian, we'd love to have you back on. Did I say it? Mekhitarian? Mekhitarian.
Perfect. Thank you, Nomiki.
Just a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you to Gabrielle for connecting us, my best friend. I just have to say, Kapelian, she's Armenian also. So thank you to her for connecting us. Give her a little shout out on air.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
We'll be right back with our panel for Femme Friday. It's a great panel. We're talking about Labor Secretary. Who is going to be Labor Secretary? Stay tuned. Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers. Hey guys, welcome back to the Nomiki Show. Did you know it is the second and final Friday, the 13th of 2020, meaning we've had two Friday the 13th this year. But don't be afraid, because we're only 68 days away from the inauguration, just 68 days for Donald Trump to continue to try to declare victory. But I don't want to talk about Donald Trump or even Joe Biden. Today, I want to talk directly to Senator Bernie Sanders and appeal to him in the clearest way I can. Senator, don't do it. Don't take all that we have built as a movement and trade it to be Secretary of Labor. You are bigger than that job, or frankly, any job. You set a movement in motion, and we aren't done. If anything, this election shows how much work we have to do. For sure, we need a strong labor secretary, a progressive there, and you should use your leverage and power to help pick maybe her. We need strong progressives all across the Biden administration, and that's just the point. We may have won the fight for the soul of the country, although probably not even that, but we are clearly in a struggle right now for the soul of the Democratic Party. That is the fight you rallied us to, Senator Sanders. That's the fight we still need you to lead. You are our champion and our strongest voice. From your seat in the Senate, you can mobilize, you can raise money, you can speak out, and you can remain independent, truly independent. I heard what you said about being labor secretary when you were asked if you would take it. You said, yes, if you could help working families. Well, that sounds like you were trying to get some guarantees. But promises from Biden that you'd get a voice in policy beyond the traditional work of the Labor Department, you already have that voice, don't you? You can weigh in anytime on any issue, not just labor, right now as a senator. You don't think you'll be able to get on the phone with Joe Biden or rally folks around legislation that you propose? And if you can't, you have your campaign committee, your media channels, your ability to endorse candidates and support progressive groups. That comes with you being in the Senate. You can still be political. Taking a seat in the cabinet ties you down. Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich knows this very well. He described it as being caged in when he worked in the Clinton cabinet. And Bill Clinton was his friend since they were Rhodes Scholars, and he still was caged in. It is a mistake to channel the energy of our movement into that one post. The group steering us towards, I respect them, the group steering us towards this are funneling all of our focus and energy in one big bet. Sanders as labor secretary. But no, that's not enough, frankly. We need to be thinking and acting much bigger right now. We should be exposing the other candidates for corporate and lobbying ties, or even just a failure to read the nation's profound needs right now. So that it's too embarrassing in this moment of crisis, to have those corporate folks leading us out of the crisis. They need to be shamed. We are already seeing how the centrists can't be trusted. Instead of thanking us for sucking it up in these final months to make sure Trump was defeated, they have started, of course, blaming us for their pathetic showing down ballot. Progressives clearly did not cause Democrats to lose. The dysfunctional and frankly corrupt the Democratic Party, beholden to consultants and lobbyists and big money, caused Democrats to lose. That is what AOC was trying to call out the other day in that New York Times article, when she said, we are dumping all this money into TV ads instead of building a digital future. Those poor fragile moderates got all bent out of shape. But she wasn't even speaking truth to power. She was speaking truth to a bunch of bumbling party insiders who wouldn't know what a better campaign idea was if they tripped over it, over a yard sign maybe. Now, as I said the other day, I have great hope we can rise above the backbiting and build a new Democratic Party, a workers' Democratic Party that actually will get out and win elections. But the centrists have shown time and time again that they don't operate in good faith. It's always on their terms, capitalist terms. Senator, if you go into the administration, you will never, ever get all that you want. You'll have to compromise, maybe 51% at most, no matter what they promise up front. And you won't be there to help the rest of this if this all goes south and we have to fight for the place in the party. I feel that we have already won. So, Senator, use your considerable leverage to pick a good labor secretary. And then keep your powder dry and remember that you are our leverage as a movement. It is bigger than you, Bernie, not you, us. We need you as our leverage. The campaign for a fair society never ended, but it will damper if you lock yourself into a cabinet. Being the line of the Senate, whoever is in control, Democrats or Republicans, only helps the growing members of the squad. They need a voice in the Senate. We need more senators like you. And it is how you pressure a creature of the Senate, Joe Biden. Think of Joe Biden as Johnson, President Johnson, creature of the Senate. This is how you get things done. You pressure from the Senate. Look, some of us work the night shift. Some of us take the early bus. Senator Sanders, there is a big job of work we need you to do. And to do it, we need you to stay in the Senate. Now that you have this power there, please use it. Don't get caged in. All right, we're going to be right back with our Femme Friday panel. We have an amazing panel. We will be talking about the cabinet picks, the potential cabinet picks, and the labor secretary, whoever that might be, with Kim Kelly. And we're going to be talking about also climate policy with a Sunrise Movement Bay Area organizer, Ava Mohsenin. So we'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back. Who better to talk about whether or not Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren should be labor secretary than Kim Kelly? Kim Kelly is back for Femme Friday. She writes about labor at Teen Vogue. It's kind of funny, actually. Like, you're writing labor for, I mean, technically, I guess teenagers, but I'm reading it.
Technically, but well, I don't know how many 16-year-olds are reading. Hopefully a lot, but I feel like most of the feedback is from people like our age. But either way, I'll take it.
Get them while they're young, you know? So Kim, all right. I'm going to start with a quick question about labor with you, and then we're going to move into climate and bring Ava in. Hot take. What's your take on? I just did my little rundown, my spiel. What's your take on whether or not Bernie or Warren should be labor secretary?
Warren, I don't know where that came from. I feel like she has other interests. But I think Bernie, so there's the quickest hot take. There's like 3 names being floated right now, right? Bernie is, obviously he's lobbying for it. There's also a coalition of labor leaders who are calling for Michigan Representative Andy Levin to take the job. And then there's also some other labor leaders who are pulling for Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. They all have pros and cons. One thing about Bernie that I think is positive and helpful is that we already know what he wants to do, right? Like when he was running for president, he had a whole section on his website about what he wants to do for labor. So having that blueprint, I think, is really beneficial because it shows, that priorities that he has already stated he has are the same priorities that people in the labor movement have been fighting tooth and nail for so long. Things like just cause, things like getting rid of Taft-Hartley, things like getting rid of right to work, sectoral bargaining, dealing with worker misclassification, which is an even bigger deal now because of what just happened with Prop 22. All that being said, if I was in charge, I would tap Sarah Nelson, the president of the AFA-CWA, or Stacey Gates Davis, the vice president of the Chicago Teachers Union. But honestly, I feel like they're such important, charismatic leaders that we can't afford to stuff them away in an office. So long story short, go for it, Bernie. Go for it, Andy. Marty Walsh, not so much.
Yeah, not Marty Walsh. It's interesting, you say this because I feel the same way about Sarah Nelson, and same thing. Labor has been weakened so much so that when there are powerful leaders, over the last 35 years in labor, it's just, you don't want to lose them. Sarah Nelson just understands the way power works in a way that she could teach a masterclass. She has taught a masterclass on it. But the same thing with Bernie. Bernie has tremendous power in his movement, and to be, like you said, stuffed into an office, he loves going out there and giving those speeches and rallies, and he can continue to do that till the end of time as long as he's in the Senate. Not to mention, there's a Republican governor in Vermont right now who could appoint a Republican to the Senate. So I just think it's stupidity.
I will say, just to that point about the Republican governor, he has come out and publicly promised that if Bernie were to get that gig, he would appoint a left-leaning independent who would caucus with Democrats. So it would actually be a safe bet until the special election. That's the problem with all these, like, oh, we should get this representative, this senator, and like throwing them into these office jobs. Like, nothing is a given. We just saw this election, like, you don't know how a race is going to go. Some of these special elections might not go the way you want them to. So maybe look within the movement itself when you start cherry picking people,
Exactly. I just think that if we're going to put our energy into something, put it into something that is more of a safe bet. And you're also steering an entire movement in a direction that might be headed towards, there's like a 20% chance that this works. Even if he's in, it doesn't mean that he's going to have the power. All right. Sorry for that. We had to wait for a second. Ava Mohsenin is did I say that right, Ava?
Correct, yeah, Mohsenin.
She is an organizer with Sunrise Movement, of course, in the Bay Area. Sunrise is one of these groups that is advocating for Bernie to be labor secretary, and I believe Warren as well. So I have a very strong perspective on this, but I like debate, and I love when we debate on the left, because that's what TV should look like, not whether or not climate change is real on CNN still. Ava, so what's your take on all this?
Thank you so much for having me on the show and for inviting Sunrise Movement to kind of share our thoughts on this. So the idea is, or the short answer I would say is, we're not specifically advocating for like one person and that's our gung-ho leader, but to say that, he should really the Biden administration should appoint individuals who represent the American people, not proxies for large corporations, private profits. A really radical idea, I know. But the Biden-Harris administration was elected on this historic mandate for action on climate. COVID and systemic racism in the economy. And to really fulfill that promise to build back better, they need a team that represents the ambition of that vision. And that means putting progressives in the cabinet.
You know, it's interesting in one of Biden's closing speeches, and he has these moments every once in a while where it's like, oh, who's this guy coming? He's a creature of neoliberal movement, but, you know, he was the poorest senator until he was the vice president. And there is this like element of working class Joe that kind of creeps in every once in a while. Not necessarily reflected in his votes or his policies, but like in his personality. And there was this moment in one of his last speeches where he said, you know, in order to build back better, it needs to be built with labor. The only way we build back better, I'm paraphrasing, of course, is with the labor movement. And it gave me like, you have these seconds where you're just going, oh, that's him creeping in. But then you look at the transition team and it's full of Uber and Lyft executives, and it's full of Airbnb and gig working executives and defense, contract consultants and security experts who overlap with tech. So Kim, I mean, I'm sure you've been looking at this carefully. What on that transition team alarms you the most?
I mean, like you said, the fact that it is just absolutely riddled with these Silicon Valley vampires. You've got executives from I even wrote it down. We got Alphabet, we got Amazon, Facebook, Dropbox, Dell, LinkedIn, Stripe, and Lyft and Uber. And those two are the ones that stick out to me because, as we just saw with Proposition 22, they are not in any way, shape, or form like for the people, for the working class. They're actively against it. So the fact that the Biden administration appointed them to their transition team sends a really worrisome message. I mean, there's already a conflict there. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris's brother-in-law is like super high up at Uber and was leading the charge for Prop 22. So there's already so many contradictions and so many uncomfortable aspects to how things are shaping out. I'm seldom very optimistic about anything the government does, but this sort of, this grace period we have where we're trying to see like, oh, maybe they'll do something cool. They're already starting off like on the back foot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're in the Bay Area, Ava. I mean, she's your senator, Senator Harris. This is Silicon Valley. Like this to me looks like a Kamala Harris cabinet. People have said, oh, it's Obama's third term. I see it as a Kamala Harris, like friends and family and donor plan. I don't know. Maybe. Do you think it's? I mean, sometimes they hand out these like positions sort of as rewards for donations, but they don't necessarily have power. It's like being, in an inaugural committee. Appoint to plan an event or something. They're not really powerful, but I don't know. I mean, what's your take? You're there.
It's true. I'm in Kamala's hometown, and that poises us as organizers on the ground to be in a really unique position to pressure Biden. And I remember last year at the DNC convention, it was the Sunrise Movement that helped kind of ensure that she was signing a no fossil fuel money pledge. And so I see her making these choices that yield to the power of progressive movements and to activists and to organizers on the ground. And so I have a little bit of faith in their ability to, understand what their base is asking for, and for them to embrace the base is kind of like the most essential piece for them to be listening to right now, not to be sticking in the corporate as executives, the fossil fuel money folks, the folks that, to Kim's point, are really tied up in all of these corporate interests. And I think particularly I was reflecting on how, Kamala Harris's hometown had days of suffocating smoke and orange skies, like bleeding across the Bay Area. And, for her to grow up in this area and then not act on climate, I mean, it would be atrocious. And I know it's important to the administration. And so for us, it's really critical to see some climate champions and Green New Deal champions really fill the cabinet and start to influence the mandate and bring to life the mandate that they have, the American people has delivered.
The Green New Deal has caught on so much, and it's really it gives me so much optimism for our future, seeing how quickly the Green New Deal was able to catch on. But let's just go back a couple of years, even a couple of months. Some labor has been at odds with any sort of infrastructure changes or environmental, like for instance, fracking, ending fracking. There's always been this sort of obstacle where the left could never be on the same page because because of some components of labor. Kim, you covered labor. Where generally speaking, I guess, because there's so much labor out there, where is labor right now when it comes to the Green New Deal?
I think we're still kind of stuck because there are, like you said, labor is not a monolith. There are a lot of industries, a lot of perspectives, a lot of people, and a lot of kinds of jobs. The tension that you're referring to when it comes to the Green New Deal is that there were some sections of labor, particularly in the building trades and the extractive industries. They were worried that, this is going to destroy our industry. This is going to take away our jobs. This is going to leave our members penniless. And obviously that's not necessarily the case. We don't know yet because we're not there. But there is a very valid argument to be made that embracing the Green New Deal and clean energy would actually generate more good union jobs that would not harm the planet as much and would actually still take care of people who are doing that kind of work or retrain them in ways that will actually help them to find a better future for themselves. But the labor it's a big tent. And trying to get everyone to agree on anything is like getting everyone at Thanksgiving dinner to agree on one thing, right? It's never going to be a unanimous vote or a unanimous decision. But I think that there has been a lot more dialogue in the community that has been kind of veering, at the very least, towards a more progressive view, because it's obvious something's got to give. Even the coal miners who theoretically are clinging to their jobs, no one asked them, do you really think someone would rather go down in the pit and contract black lung and be completely neglected by the government when they ask for help instead of working on a windmill or something? This is something that when it comes back to the labor secretary, one of the interesting tensions there, we have Representative Andy Levin, who has already been a big proponent of clean energy and environmental projects. And then Marty Walsh, he comes from the building trades, that more conservative, entrenched, hetero or homogenous looking leadership. And it's kind of this, and then there's Bernie, who is Bernie. So
wait. I have a question about the building trades. I'm a New Yorker. Building trades are extremely powerful in New York. And there was just this bill that was finally passed by my council member, Costa Constantinidis, who'd been advocating it. I think he's one of the most probably environmentally progressive lawmakers in the country. And he, for years, he'd been advocating for this retro banning natural gas. I'm going to completely screw up how this is being explained, but the biggest cause of emissions in the city of New York is through buildings, through natural gas leaks in buildings. And so, this bill was essentially supposed to ban new natural gas and retrofit. And the building trades were always at odds with that bill. And somehow, I don't know how he did it, magic, he got it passed finally, which is transformative because people think it's, cars that are causing the majority of emissions in New York City, and it's not. So question about what is their holdup about the Green New Deal? Anybody chime in, feel free to. You can talk over each other, doesn't matter.
If you wanted to jump in.
Well, I can't speak to the building trades particularly. I'm sure you have a lot more thoughts there. But I think the one thing that I was thinking about when you were speaking previously, Kim, was around how it is Big Tent. There are so many different ideas. And that's similar in theory with the Green New Deal. And I think when you center the workers that are most marginalized, if you center the communities that have been often left out of these conversations around climate action at the federal level, when you start to center those communities, you think about and you start to understand ideas around a just transition. And what does that mean for people who have been have been focused on their jobs for so long and are starting to worry about the risks that they pose as it relates to the climate. And the centerpiece of the Green New Deal is a just transition. And that's for working class Americans to understand that there are ways that we can invest at the federal level into in a green transition into the energy sector that gives them dignified union jobs, millions of them. And that's something that it needs to happen at the federal level, and then all other levels would follow suit. And we believe there's a real opportunity for the Biden administration to push forward those ideals.
Right. The just transition is huge because you can't just show up in front of a group of workers and say, okay, the work you do is harming the environment, is harming people. You shouldn't be doing it. So you should quit and good luck out there. You need to offer people something. And, there's been so much hubbub around job training programs. Yeah. Some of them work, some of them don't. And a lot, when it comes to building trades, I mean, I grew up, my dad works construction, and my granddad and my uncles, like my boyfriend, like, it's very much something that I'm familiar with on a personal level. And one of the big and interesting factors of folks who work in those trades are that is a kind of job that you don't need all of these sort of, you don't need to go to college necessarily. You can have some sort of criminal record. As long as you can do the work, you can generally get a job in these fields. And that's something that's been very helpful for a lot of people. You can get a decent wage and a decent job and be part of a union. That's the, you know, a remnant of the American dream, right? And when there is a sort of existential threat to that ability, to that way of life, people don't always react in the most positive way. But that's why, as you were saying, it's so important to show that this isn't just a either or, it's a yes and. Like, labor is really doing ourselves a disservice to be doing anything but supporting this kind of big measure, because, you know, there's only so much coal out there, and there's only so much that the earth can take, but there's always going to be people that need a way to put food on the table.
Right. And let's not forget, it's popular. I mean, these are policies that, while they may be construed in the media, they get broad levels of support amongst American community, the American population. Even like a Fox News analysis on election night, I was just reviewing, and it showed like overwhelming support for these quote unquote far left progressive policies. Anything from, you know, how many people are concerned about the climate, or what kind of investment the federal government needs to be making. And so we need to stop acting collectively like these policies are kind of super far left, out of a whim, like off a whim ideas, when in reality, this is what the American people want. And so to think about what the Biden administration should be doing in the first 100 days, the kinds of people he should be surrounding himself with, it's those that are going to stand up and say this is what they want, not the Uber and the Lyft executives in the room.
And just one more note on the building trades. I don't want to paint anybody with a super broad brush, because I actually recently did a piece for Teen Vogue talking to leftist and progressive building trades union members about what it's like to be in that environment and to deal with that leadership and what they're doing to push things forward. So it's even the building trades. It can't just be used as a catch-all, because it is diversifying. It is getting younger. It is getting more. There are people that are trying to push it in a more progressive direction. Like, you can't write them off, and you absolutely shouldn't. It's just a matter of, as you're saying, listening to people and meeting the workers where they are and offering them something worthwhile, instead of just saying, oh, no, you're terrible, get out of here. No one's going to respond to that.
So in terms of, outside of the Biden administration, is there local effort happening? I mean, is there anything like in state legislatures, in case, you know, Biden does not do what we are pushing for him to do? I mean, so far, yes, he's made promises in the campaign, but it's not looking that way when you look at the transition team. There's some good people on the transition team, a couple. But, I mean, what happens if he doesn't? Is there a course of action? You guys hearing anything? Better get thinking, guys. All right, there we go. Well, I mean, we're just not saying it yet.
my first thought is always general strike, but that's
always,
you know, which is much easier said than done. But yes. I do think, you know, if the administration fumbles it, which, I mean, I'm not saying that they won't, but I'm not saying that they would, you know, who's to say? We'll see. But I'm not very optimistic. So if they fumble it, we're going to be in a similar position that we are in now, where we need to organize around these structures and be an adversarial presence to these structures that are trying to grind us down. Like the labor movement, I at least personally think it is way too cozy with the mainstream Democratic establishment. I think we need to remember our roots and, you know, get our teeth back and let them and show them that, you know, there's more of us than there are of them. And we are prepared to fight for our future, whether or not you like whatever way we decide to go about it.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add that I mean, I think to your point, we've been organizing under a Trump administration for the last 4 years, and we have propelled the Green New Deal to be a national conversation. I mean, climate has become the number one priority for so many folks. And progressive ideals around healthcare or housing as human rights are taking grasp in cultural conversations across the U.S. So it's definitely easier when we have an administration who is embracing these ideas. But we are not holding our breath either. And up and down ballot races are equally important. And that's the mentality and the theory of change that we have embodied at Sunrise Movement. And even locally in the Bay Area have really pushed hard for get out the vote efforts to encourage people coming out for, California props. Many didn't go our way, but state representatives and progressives in city council or, board of supervisors. And those are important because that is where we organize. Those are the communities, it's the neighbors, it's our friends and our family that are impacted by the local policies. And so making sure that we are kind of pulling our people power to gain political power at various levels of the government is critical.
And to your point, in terms of labor specifically, outside of the electoral vibe, something that is really important to me, because I've done it, is for people who are involved in unions, involved in labor, who are dissatisfied with the decisions leadership is making, is to run for your local council, is to get involved, do what you can to push your union left. And, it's hard and there's a lot of meetings and it's not the most glamorous way to get involved. It's not a strike. It's not throwing a bomb or dynamiting a bridge like we used to back in the day. But, there are people making these decisions. And if you think that you have a better idea than the people in charge, then maybe you should get in the room and be like, you have to listen to me now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they use process as a tool to control whatever workers, the left inside of the party. So the more we understand that process, there's just a million different union tricks and process tricks, I'm sure you're very aware of, Kim, that can be used. But okay, real quick before we wrap up, give us a little, other than the Biden administration, who is, where are we in count in terms of senators, congressional members who support the Green New Deal, unions that support the Green New Deal? Where are we right now? The status of the GND?
Well, I'll start, and whether I'm not sure if I have specific numbers on Senate races and support, but we know that, the Green New Deal is an increasingly popular policy. And what we saw on election night was really encouraging, because you're seeing the folks that ran on more progressive ideals were the ones that won. And so while, Biden kind of ran on this as a unity candidate, more of a centrist compared to the others in the race, what you actually saw was that people were coming out to vote. What they're invigorated by, what they're inspired by, are these ideas of, healthcare for that makes sense and that covers people, for a climate that is livable and so forth. So we think that one of the top priorities is, of course, winning the Senate and following the races closely in Georgia. But to do that is to follow the lead and support workers and organizers kind of on the ground. And even if Republicans maintain control of the Senate, there is still a lot of work that can be done at the federal level to kind of combat these multiple and intersecting crises we face.
And what are you thinking? Yeah,
on the union side, I would say the Green New Deal, it has such a reputation as being hated by unions, but it isn't. It has, I just looked up real quick the current endorsements. We have the American Federation of Teachers, the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, National Nurses United, the Association of Flight Attendants, shout out Sarah Nelson, and the main AFL-CIO, they've endorsed it. They're down. And those are heavy hitters. So I think it might just be a matter of time and a matter of pressure and a matter of organizing to get more unions on board and to get the AFL-CIO to really embrace this as a major plank in the platform, the goal, the mission. I think we've made a good start. And I think that this is not, I think the train has left the station and it's not coming back. It's moving.
Perfect for Biden. That's how you speak Biden. The train has left the station, guys.
Oh, God. Amtrak Joe. Bless us.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Kim Kelly, Ava Mohsenin from Sunrise. Just always a pleasure to have you on, Kim. And we'd love to have you back as we hopefully make some big progress when it comes to climate. Thank you to everybody. All right. Special shout outs to Moore El Algo. Thanks for covering this topic. Oh, I think that was with Armenia earlier. And CB Logic, thanks for the love. Kowalski from Nebraska just says he became a patron recently. Thanks for the content. You can be a patron too. Join us at patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for as low as $5 a month. I say it all the time. Harvey K. Hey, I have my little Harvey K section right here. I don't know if once Harvey K put a picture of Obama like giving a chat behind, he had a bookshelf behind him, and he was like, oh my God, there's my Thomas Paine book. Well, I want him to do that to me, screenshot and show his books right here. All right, thank you to MIDI Doctors and Jules for working the algorithms. I was in there. I saw how it all worked, watching it when we were doing the pre-tape earlier with the interview. And of course, thank you to Bob and Chokin for keeping the chat room troll free. We don't like those trolls. We will see you on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy, this moment because we're about to go into some more insanity. And maybe by Tuesday, Donald Trump will realize he is not the future president. All right, take care, everybody.